Hey, gang. This is a beginning lecture on the next chapter, which is a memory chapter. I'm doing this without notes, so I may leave out a few things, but I will once I get my notes. I'll have to sneak in the office and get them. They're not letting anybody on campus. Uh, but I'll get my notes and then I'll fill in the blanks for you before the test. Um, the next chapter is on memory, and there's three types of memory. One, I don't even consider a memory, but who am I? Um, there are sensory memory, short-term memory, and long-term memory. Sensory memory, the only thing that is stimulated is your senses. So sensory memory is sound like some of you who read the chapter and don't remember anything. Your sense of vision, visual stimulation, but there's no cognitive map. Nothing is remembered. It's just like if you were leaving campus and the three cars passed you, and I asked you what was described the first car, and you said you couldn't because your memory, your sensory percept saw the car, not important. You didn't remember it, and so it's gone. The next type of memory is short-term memory, and the way you get from sensory memory to short-term memory is pay attention. So if you pay attention to something, it stores it long enough to make sense of it. So that's what we call it short-term memory. The average short-term memory for most people is 5 to 9 items, 7 plus or minus 2. And they're like little containers. And once you put too much in, like cramming, it overflows. So you should never cram. I know I'm talking on deaf ears here. But short-term memory is called short-term or working memory because it's only there for a short time. Duh. But in order to get from sensory to short-term, you got to pay attention. One of the ways you increase short-term memory is through chunking, and that's putting related items together. For instance, we talked about George Washington. George Washington was married to whom? I hope you said Martha. They lived in Mount Vernon. Don't say Washington, D.C. He did not have wooden teeth. That's a myth. He married Martha not because he loved her, because she had money. If you ever seen a picture of Martha, you'll understand, and so forth. So chunking is putting all those four things, or all those 6, 7 things together, and you take up less space. And you students do this very well when you cram and study. So short-term memory, and we want to get to long-term memory. As teachers, we want you to long-term memory. Long-term memory, in order to get from short-term to long-term, is encoding. You have to encode. Encode is a fancy psychological term for organizing. That's when you organize material in your memory, you form a cognitive map of it, and it's stored. Long-term memory lasts for forever. That's why it's called long-term. And some of you have a hard time retrieving some information. It's not because you forgot, it's because you can't retrieve it. And when we'll talk about things that affect retrieval in the next lecture. So long-term memory is a long-term, it is passive, it doesn't need to be reinforced, it's there, it's just, it's in your brain, we just have to retrieve it out. Short-term memory, on the other hand, is active, ongoing process. And unless we do something, it may disappear because we didn't save it. It's like on the computer. It's on your computer, and when you click it off, it's gone. So you need to save it. How do you save it? By encoding. Encoding, again, is organization. I mean, it even sounds better, the word encoding, right? What are you doing? I'm organizing my sock drawer. It doesn't sound very impressive. Ooh, what are you doing? I'm encoding my sock drawer. Ooh, can I come over? See, it sounds a lot more exciting. So the fact is that we have short-term, sensory, short-term, and long-term memories. And 5 things that can increase long-term memory is, one is meaningfulness. And this relates to your homework, so we can do this. This is why I'm doing this lecture here. Meaningfulness means it has value to the learner. It has meaning to the learner. So if it's valuable to you, you will learn it. That's why some of you people have some hard time with some gen education courses, is because you don't see the value in it. It doesn't have meaning for you. So if you can make things more meaningful, you can remember them longer. The second thing is more striking. Things that are more striking or stand out, remember. We remember our dreams, we remember nightmares or fantasies because they're more interesting than our other boring dreams. Or if you went to a party and some guy came in with an axe in his head, you remember that. So things are more striking. That's why we underline things in our notes. But a lot of you underline everything, so that defeats the purpose. The third thing is repetition. Yeah, you know, like with training a dog, they hear their name so many times, eventually they figure out that's me. So repetition is very important. Now the theory is that you say something 7 times over and over again, you remember it, is a myth. It's not true. It helps, but it's not a guarantee you remember it. So repetition. That's why you need to look at your notes, review them, rewrite them for repetition. The fourth thing is encoding. It's how you organize things. For instance, if you clean your clothes and you just have a giant pile of clothes in your living room, in your bedroom, you may not find the outfit you want. But if you organize them in your closet, you can find it immediately. So how you package the product is important for long-term memory. And the final is visual imagery, which means you make a mental picture of it. And I have this great activity, but we can't do it on the, well, maybe you can, I might put it on there to see if it'll work. But the fact is, visual imagery is, so if you can picture it, you can remember it. It's just like the term, so it's forming cognitive maps. What's a cognitive map? A cognitive map is a mental picture in the brain. If I say rain, there's a little guy in your brain, rushes to your category pile, pulls out the word rain, and sees the water falling down. I know what rain is. If I say oogle boogle, he rushes over there and he can't find it because you don't have a cognitive map of it. So when we make visual imagery, we're forming cognitive maps. So in order to get from sensory to short term, we have to pay attention. Short term to long term, we have to encode. And then the 5 things I told you help you increase long-term memory. The problem is retrieval problems. Once it's in there, how do we get it out? And we'll talk about that later. But the meaningfulness affects the homework that you need to do when you do that, talk to those 4 people and you give them the context of, I think it's kite flying. So I will hopefully talk to you soon. Stay safe and study. Take your notes. All right. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.